All right, so thank you for coming. I would like to get underway. We have converted this to a meeting instead of a webinar, and after the presentation, we're going to ask for help from the audience in making some prompts for the AI GPT-3. This is Matthew Turnshek. He's going to introduce himself and go ahead.
Hi. So I'm more of a technologist than a writer. So I am going to need some assistance. But I'm an engineer. I work at Forment, which is a robotic software company. Before that, I founded a company which was sort of a teleoperation and AI company. What I'm sharing with you today is an AI that was developed this year in the spring, and it was released in a beta that I got access to, and I found my way to you as an audience. And what I want to do is share its capabilities because they have implications in the writing world. And so it's a bit of a roundabout talk. It is a capability. It is a new AI capability which has been introduced in the world, and I have a window to you to talk about it. So, and I'm also going to introduce how to actually use this AI. Things will become a little bit more clear as the talk gets underway. So the format for this talk is generally I am administering this to technologists or a more technical audience. And so I'm going to try to simplify things to get across sort of what the model is. And I would actually appreciate, I don't know if there's chat capability. Oh, I don't know if there's chat capability, but if there is, then I would appreciate any questions, anything unclear that comes up in the middle of this, just poke a question in the chat and I'll try to answer this.
Matthew, we could use the Q&A function as well, but if you'd like to use chat because that's what you're used to, that's fine.
No, Q&A would actually be even better if we can do that. And so that is hand raising based?
Well, people can enter questions in a Q&A window.
Okay, let's try it out.
You can be entering questions, building it up, and then we can go through it whenever. We can let you know how many questions are there, and we can start whenever you want and start going through the questions.
Okay, that's great. So I'm going to just get started because I want to have a large part of this be live demos, which we can get to. Will be super fun for everyone. Okay, so to get started, so this is the way that people talk about AI in natural language processing, which is the field that sort of deals with text, like written text, is NLP, and people talk about things in terms of models. Models are sort of they have an input and they have an output, and the model is the thing you are creating when you are developing an NLP AI. So this, the company that developed this is OpenAI. So this is the company is OpenAI. They're a San Francisco company. They were funded most recently by Microsoft, a $1 billion investment in the last couple of years. So they're one of the most well-funded AI research labs in the country. DeepMind, they're on the same level as DeepMind, to put that in perspective, if that's familiar to anyone. I think that the most important thing that I want to get across with this slide is that it is prohibitively costly to train this model, as anyone except a very well-funded technology company that has lots of expertise. So it costs 12 million just to train this model once. If you got the training process wrong, you messed something up, you'd have wasted 10 million or $12 million worth of compute. I think the size on disk for the final model, this 350 gigabytes is so much larger than, again, this number is more meaningful to those in the field, but if, even a gigabyte is very unwieldy as the size of a model. 350 gigabytes basically means you need a very large supercomputer to even run it. The data set, so well, let's circle back to the data set because I think we need a little bit more context on what this model does first. So let's see. I think I have to switch up the ordering of things. So this is an example of what the I think I have to switch up the ordering of some of these slides because I'm realizing that if I just go through this, we will not have the proper context. So I'm going to switch to a live demo first, just to get the capability out there, and then we'll switch back. We'll talk about it a little bit more, and then we'll switch back to live demos. So the idea with this, this is a playground that interacts with the model. The idea is that you can enter text, and then the model continues the text with the most likely continuation that it has read, that it has learned from reading a data set that you provided. The data set that this model is trained on is a lot of internet, a lot of Wikipedia, a lot of books. And so it has learned to continue the text that you have provided it. So if I have provided this text, the model will think, forgive my usage of words. I'm not necessarily implying that this model is actually consciously thinking, but sometimes I might say things like that because I get caught up in how good it is. The model will sort of take what you have provided it and then continue it as if it is something it has read on the internet. So if I hit submit here, we will see the model continue the prompt. Now it got a little bit, it kind of went off on a side course, and I hope that we see a lot of good and bad outputs from it so that we can understand the limitations. The most important thing that I want to get across is the new capability that is in the world and its strengths and weaknesses. So the reason why it sort of goes off and sometimes produces this nonsensical output is that its data set is unclean. These are things that could be improved in the training process. But so we can delete that. It generated this next text. Look no further and try one of these favorite home recipes. Yeah, Kathy, exactly. Look no further and try one of these favorite home recipes from the top chefs in town. So this is kind of like a clickbaity article that we entered here. This title and body it's completely free-form text generation. So if I can start with that prompt, I can start with this prompt. So it's just a change up. So here we have, I'm sort of asking the model to do translation for me here. I'm saying, imagine you're reading an article and you're in the middle of the article somewhere and you see the following text. Here are several examples. And then you see an English passage, and then you see someone say something that generally speaking implies that they were about to follow that up with a French translation of it, a very simple French translation. And then you ask the model to continue this. It will produce a passage. And now we would have to, verify that this passage does actually make the sense that we want it to make. So I'm going to just do that now. I don't speak French, but translating this back to English, it says, inline assembly is a continuous fabrication that uses pieces of work where parts are added to the current assembly as the assembly progresses from one workstation to another, where parts are added one by one until the final assembly is produced. That's what the French statement said. I ran this a different time, and it gave me this passage as the French line, which this one's even simpler. I like this output. This just says, we make cars by passing parts from one station to another. So the model was not trained specifically to learn how to translate French, but we have given it some prompt. And now this is what the prompt design component of the talk means. We have written a prompt that makes the model give us what we want, which is a French translation, a simple French translation of this English paragraph. And so this is called ZeroShot Learning, which is, there's sort of, now, let me go back to this slide here to describe this. So this is ZeroShot Learning. So it is, no examples are provided of translating English to French. We just design a prompt which compels the model to produce a French translation. One shot would be that we give it a prompt that we actually show one example of English to French translation, and then the model produces the translation. And then few shot would be that we provide several examples, and then the model gives another one. And few shot is, you don't have to provide many examples to really increase the performance of any prompt design that you would give this model. But the fact that it can do zero shot at all is very impressive and new as a capability in the world. So this graph is from the research paper that just sort of shows the accuracy of various tasks, how the model performs when providing several examples versus not providing examples. I think I would go more into these sorts of charts to a more technical audience, but I really want to focus on live demos, so I'm just going to get through the bare minimum and explain these graphs. So this graph, essentially what this says is that the training process could have continued. We could have kept training new models with larger and larger compute, and it probably would have kept making better models. The reason they stopped here wasn't because it seemed like the progress of their training was slowing down. It just got expensive and they had to stop at some point. So we could make an even better model given the exact same architecture if we just spent longer with more money on the problem. This is this is a very interesting prompt. It's going to be a little bit foreign because it. So this is an example of an application that uses GPT-3. It uses GPT-3 to automatically generate UIs. So this is a bit of an answer to the question on the chat. What do you perceive to be the uses for this tech? There are lots of interesting answers to that. This is one. It's code generation. So you enter a description of what you want, and someone has constructed a prompt in the background here that takes what you write, makes a prompt based on what you put in this box, and then that prompt is used to generate code, to make the model generate code that produces a UI element. So this is sort of like some code that generates this watermelon button. So somebody said, button that looks like a watermelon, you press generate, it generates the code for it. And this is what the button looks like when this is rendered by a browser, when this code is rendered by a browser. So it's in this case, we're taking a more expressive natural language description of what we want, and then using prompt design to translate it, but into code this time instead of French code that does something. It's not perfect. So like, this didn't work, this one. And then the person goes in and fixes it up, and it works. So some sci-fi people have already started writing stories about software engineers that have their jobs have changed so that all they do now is just maintain and edit the code produced by AIs. Can computers self-learn after first? How did the model learn English, French, or any relationship between the two? What's the training data? So let's go back to the this slide with the data set. So all good questions. I'll answer all those right now. So this is the data set. So Common Crawl is essentially just the most unfiltered internet crawl you could possibly do. It's just grab information from everywhere using a web crawler, kind of like what Google would do. And then filtered is some very basic filtering to clean up that data. But this is the majority of the text here. This was 60% of the training mix. And then what this number over here means is how many times each token, or rather, I guess I should say each sentence would maybe be simpler, in the training set was read by the model during the training process. So Common Crawl, only 44% of the sentences were read, and each sentence was read once. Web text 2, this is just more like a high quality web data set. So this is Reddit links, I think, with more than 3 upvotes. So the goal with that is to make it, a diverse data set, but higher quality than something that didn't receive any human attention. And each sentence in there was read about 3 times. Books 1 and 2 are just collections of lots of books. And I'm not really sure what the difference is here. Wikipedia, you're all familiar with, and Wikipedia was read the most. So each sentence on average was read 3.4 times in the training process. It's very easy to see that this model is very biased, and we can dive into that at some point in the live demos. So how did the model learn English, French, or any relationship between the two? So you could imagine that some of what it saw on the internet was English, some was French, some was Russian. You can really make the model do any of these. Whatever it got the most exposure to, it's going to be best at, and that's English. But it can speak other languages and translate. Translation in general has really improved in the last 4 or 5 years. And most models are specifically tailored to be translation models. This is it's interesting that you don't have to train for translation to be able to do it. What makes this so expensive? So the $1 million of training are actually not even including the cost of employees. That is the pure compute cost. So if you wanted to, so this, GPUs are what this is trained on. If you rented the GPU compute power for the amount of time needed to train this, it would cost you 12 million. So it would be even higher if you accounted for employees. And it's just because there's so many operations that you need to do to adjust the parameters of the model. It just takes a very long time. Oh. Okay, so let's keep going. So you might think, if a lot of people, the first thing that they did with it is asked it nonsense questions, and the model would sort of produce nonsense answers if you ask it nonsense questions. By the way, feel free to begin sort of. I don't really want to open the floodgates yet, I guess, on inserting prompts into it, but I will at some point. So feel free to begin thinking about what you would like to try in the background here. So an uncertainty. So this is an uncertainty prompt, which is like we've provided examples. So the gray text is the prompt, and the black text is what the model generates. The examples show that the prompt designer wants "you'll be real" to appear when the question makes no sense. So this makes no sense. That's a "you'll be real." This makes no sense. This does make sense, and it gives an accurate answer. Same with this. So an umbrella works. The model gives a realistic answer. This makes no sense. The model says "you'll be real." If you hadn't put this, you would see the model produce some pretty dumb-looking answers. But this shows that there's a level of understanding that what you typed doesn't even really make sense. So this is an interesting prompt. I would like us to just read it. This is one of my favorites that I found. This is kind of like a historical prompt. So if there was an article on the internet that started with "an exciting new manuscript has been found from a long time ago," and it's a new Plato dialogue, and then you sort of start it and begin it with Socrates and then let it go. The most likely thing that comes after this is a real sort of ancient document. And so it just begins trying to generate it. Yeah, I'll take a second so that we can read this. So this is certainly cherry picked. I mean, the person who designed this prompt probably clicked the generate button at least 50 times before getting one this good. Nonetheless, the strongest results of this model are what the new capability that's been entered into the world is. So even if it requires 50 attempts, and it requires a human to verify that it's good, it's still it's still something new. So I want to begin designing prompts, but before that, yeah. So it can totally overfit the data. And if you don't provide a large enough training set, it will, in fact, overfit the data very strongly. But it's anything that this model generates, you can actually just go check if it's on the internet. You can search for the phrases that it uses. Sometimes you'll find that it uses phrases that it found on the internet, but it's not frequent. You know, ultimately, the amount of parameters that it has is not even close to the amount of sentences that it's read. And in fact, most sentences that it reads, it only ever reads them one time. So, or maybe twice. And so it, you know, each sentence provides such a small update to this model, just because the training set is so large that unless it sees a sentence used multiple times, it doesn't really pick up that that sentence is a part of the phraseology. And if it sees the sentence many times, then it might use it again, but that's just because the sentence really is something that English speakers use repeatedly. So if we want to design our own prompts, generally speaking, you know, a strong pattern to follow is some kind of preamble followed by a repeated pattern. Like, so you saw that with, you know, this would be the preamble, and then the repeated pattern would be the dialogue between participants. This would be the preamble up here in the top, and then the repeated pattern would be the Q&A. And so this fits a lot of different prompt design use cases. But the repeated pattern could also just be text in a story. So it could be a preamble that has the keys, the tags that relate to your story, what the characters are like, and maybe even a review of the story. One very interesting prompt design is that you write a review of a story, and then you say like, and this is this is the introduction of the book on chapter 1 after the review. And so you can write what the description of it is and maybe even what somebody thinks of it, and then you see it generated. So I think it's time to switch back into live demos. And I'm just going to begin, but I want to open up some suggestions for what people want to see. Does it know that someone is not happy with the output and trying to regenerate it? So no, I just, if I'm unhappy with the output, I just delete it. So we go back to here, this one that we used earlier. So I'm coming back to this article. I'm even writing some more thing. So I'll submit, and okay, so here we go. Perfect. It went into what I expect it to with this prompt. So oftentimes it goes into, you know, starting a list of recipes, which is what I, you know, wanted it to do based on this title. So I'm going to keep this Chef Yale Bernier. We can see if this is a person. It looks like it's not. So, oh, maybe it is Yale Bernier of Bernier Farms. So it's a farmer, but it's not a cook. Maybe it's this person. You know, I think you know, often it generates people's names that aren't real. Just as an example. So cool thing here, let's have it keep going. We'll have it generate at least one recipe, and then the next thing that we do after the directions here, we can just put in our own recipe with whatever we like. And okay, so here we go. So it looks like here is the, so I'm gonna go ahead and enter in here a little bit of formatting just to, and then we can change this recipe to whatever we would like. Claudia, I will try that next. So could I get an audience made up recipe for us to see how GPT-3 tells us that it is made?
We'll see if this works any better than Q&A, but everybody should be able to unmute yourselves. If you can't, let me know in chat who you are and I'll try to fix it. You should also be able to turn on your videos if you'd like.
So are you just looking for like a name of a recipe or the whole recipe?
So it would just be the name of a recipe. It doesn't even necessarily need to be like a real recipe. In fact, I think it might be more fun if it wasn't. And we, just passed it something. Yeah, green eggs and ham. So if it's green eggs and ham, what I anticipate is that the model switches into some kind of a satire. Let's see. It looks like it's going for it. Okay, so yeah, that sounds good. Green eggs and ham. It's like a spinach, eggs and ham. I mean, it probably would work if you did this. It would produce a meal that was green and had eggs and ham and tomato.
What if you
Bread.
put purple eggs and ham?
Purple eggs and ham. Ooh, it's like maybe gonna give us onions or let's find out. Okay, I'm still looking for the purple here. Nah, didn't really work that time. Let's try again, although we might have stumped it. Okay, purple eggs, 30 eggs, wow.
Yeah, and it sounds like it thinks grape tomatoes might be purple also.
Yeah. Any other meals that we want to try out here?
How about pumpkin pecan pie?
So is it
Looks
just
like
actually
it works.
grabbing a recipe or is it's really just generating a recipe from what it knows and it's probably not a real recipe?
I think it's the latter, and we can check sort of by searching Google for one of the phrases here. And we want to put that in quotes. It's not grabbing a recipe and then translating it. It is, but it has read these pages. These pages are in its data set. I mean, maybe not these specific pages, but pages very similar. It's heard people talk about pecan pie in books and on Wikipedia. It's almost certainly read the Wikipedia pages about pecan pies. It's going to give you standard, it's not going to say preheat the oven to 367 degrees. Like it'll know the standard things that people say about preheating ovens. Interestingly though, it can't really do math very well. So if you give it very simple, math, and then it'll do that. It'll say 5. But then if you say something like, this, what does it give me? It's kind of like humans. Like I don't really know this without doing it. No, but it's wrong. It can't be right. It's got the 4, it's got the 6 right, but it didn't get the next one. And so it's not like a computer in that sense where it is nailing math problems. It's more like it learned English, but it didn't really learn how to think deeply enough that it learned how to add numbers. Okay, so I'm gonna enter Claudia's prompt. So, yeah, totally. I think it's such an interesting model. Any more questions that we can field? I'm happy to do so. Okay, so what I will say that, what we will want to do here is maybe, if we just put this in, we can just put this in and run it. So they have a content warning. Sometimes the model produces strange outputs. I don't think this really was unsafe, but they're trying. So, the people that would write something like this would generally follow it up with some kind of conspiracy, like, ooh, this is a good one. This is great. This is good stuff. So this is almost like a dialogue. Like, I would want to put this. Let's, could anyone continue a story from this point of dialogue? I would prefer to have the authors in the audience help me out with this instead of slogging through it myself. Bill, is that dialogue that I should add next?
This is your 10-minute warning.
Okay. Well, I would love to do a little bit of story writing if we can. I'd like that to be at least one part of the live demos. Is this to the end of the dialogue, Claudia? Or maybe the next character?
There's one
Here
up
we go.
in the chat. Did you see the confabulator up above?
Oh, great. Yeah, I'll grab that. I'll grab that next. Okay, well, I think I messed up. I put it as the next dialogue, but we got a good result. So the original person, they want gold. They're going to hide the gold in a hole near the Denver airport. They use gold as fuel. The cat from outer space. Interesting.
Can you throw a gold and like body parts recipe in there, since you know it does those recipes so well?
Yeah, we would have to jump back over to the other prompt here. And
so you can't do both things in the same playground, is what you're saying?
yeah, so it's like it completes just given the text that's in this playground alone. So we'll go here, probably get top 10. So we'll even start by saying 1, ultimate grilled cheese sandwich. All right, Andrew Zimmerman's doing it. Well, I don't really like that one. I think it's going to give us a joke answer if we do that. Okay, here we go. So grilled chicken breast with lentils. We'll grab that. This is just some prompt editing here. Ingredients. I'm typing this so that it starts giving us the recipe. Okay, cool. We've got the recipe going here. And now, okay, that's a lot of ingredients. Okay, this is a very detailed one, so I hope it's gold. Okay, cool. Here we go. So we're gonna separate these just so that it stands a little bit better. And then we will go ahead here and say gold and human body parts. Ingredients. Okay, we'll see. It might just get very confused, but let's. it seems to be avoiding. We've put it in a very unlikely scenario. It would be very rare to find a page on the internet that starts reasonably, gives a very real recipe for a chicken breast dish, and then starts with gold and human body parts.
It's funny that this doesn't trigger the sensitivity warning, but the other stuff did. That was about, you know, the Bible and aliens and stuff.
Okay, so it's like a beer recipe. That's a good attempt. What if we actually give it like, you know, 4 human arms? There we go. Boil the gold in water for about 4 hours. Boil the salt with the human arms and legs for about 2 hours. Put the arms and legs in foil and wrap with the gold.
This is great.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, this is good.
And that's it. And we're done. Leave for about an hour. Yeah, it just takes a little bit of convincing, Robin.
All right, we have 3 minutes. Do you want to try the confabulator or answer any?
Yeah, we'll go ahead with the confabulator, and then we'll flip over to questions. And yeah, okay, so here we go. Title, the confabulator. Ooh, nice. This is going to be good stuff. Okay, so title, let's say. And then let's say here, chapter 1. Oh, now this is interesting, but we might get caught in a loop here if we let it go. No, it did not get stuck in a loop. So one of the characters seems to be named the author. This story, I don't really understand it. If it does make sense, it's very meta, and it might not make sense. That's the thing with GPT-3 is sometimes you read it and it seems like it makes sense, and it seems like it's the kind of thing where you have to dig into it and try to understand how it fits together. But when it was written by an AI, sometimes it just doesn't. It just doesn't actually fit together, and you're kind of wasting your time reading it and trying to piece it together. And this might be one of those cases. So let's try again here. And was capable of writing a novel while its author slept or did anything else. Okay, that's a very short chapter 1. This is a very interesting format for a story. The chapters are so short. Okay, now this is a loop. check this out. So sometimes this happens when you're doing prompt design. You just get stuck in a loop because it happens once, and then it kind of happens again. And then from there, it just becomes increasingly more likely that you're going to loop and you're going to loop and you're going to keep looping. And there's something about humans where they don't get stuck in loops. Yeah, totally. If you and it totally, Naomi. And when we if we spent more time on prompt design and we really tried to make the tone just right, we can produce satire pieces. We can produce, there's actually quite a lot of skill in the design of the prompt. And for that reason, I really wanted to show this to all you authors, because I think that authors are the most powerful prompt designers currently in the world.